Rachel runs a second-hand bookshop with her friend Cheryl. They specialize in first editions, and whilst most of their business is conducted online, they do have a small shop. However, they do need to source new stock on a regular basis, and to that end, both women take turns to travel to auctions and book fairs to find rare items they require. One day Rachel came to Alex with a request. "Is there any chance of you taking a few days' leave next month?" she inquired. "Only there is a major book fair taking place in Frankfurt, and both Cheryl and I would like to go. We wondered whether you could look after the shop for a few days, whilst we are away, after all you have worked there before." Alex smiled, because this previous occasion had been when Emily worked in the bookshop as part of their comic relief stunt. "Yes, of course, I'll be happy to help out," Alex replied. "I'm finishing up on a project at work, and the advertising artwork will be sent off to the printers at the beginning of the month. There shouldn't be any problem about my taking a few days off. It's just a shame I'll be covering for you as Alex is this time." "Ah, but here's the clever part," Rachel responded. "It is Pride weekend while we are away, and Cheryl has been assembling a collection of gay, lesbian, and trans publications to display at the Pride Fair. We thought it might help sales if Emily were to run the stall. This was an opportunity Alex couldn't afford to miss." "Wow, yes, you are on. But won't my cross-dressing yet again reinforce people's view that I am a bit kinky?" "I don't think so," said Rachel, choosing her words carefully. "We are both known as being willing to make fools of ourselves by cross-dressing for a good cause. This is just another such event. Pride weekend is an important public statement of support from the town. You would just be playing your part." Alex wasn't totally reassured, but as he really wanted to do this, he agreed to go ahead. During the next few weeks, Rachel and Cheryl developed their plans. When the time arrived, Alex drove the two women to the airport early one Wednesday morning. They would be returning from Frankfurt mid-afternoon the following Monday. He then returned home and ran a warm bath into which he sprinkled a liberal amount of Rachel's favourite bath oil. A close and careful shave of his whole body ensured there no unsightly male hair showing below his eyebrows. He patted himself dry and set about transforming himself into Emily. Alex had already decided that as this was to be a working day, it would not be appropriate for him to glam up. Accordingly, he had picked out a simple black dress, paired with a geometric patterned grey and white jacket. As he knew he would be lifting and bending, the thought of wearing a corset did not appeal. So his underwear was a simple white bra, padded control knickers, and neutral tights. He adopted a similar approach to his makeup, a clean daytime look with just enough eyeshadow and mascara to bring out his eyes, a touch of blusher, and a deep pink lipstick. With his long blonde wig and a gold chain necklace, gold earrings, and a couple of bangles, he was pleased with the finished effect. "Well, Emily, you are looking appropriately professional for a bookseller," he thought, looking at her reflection in the mirror. It was now 10 a.m. and time she got round to opening the shop. The day went much as she had anticipated. Only a few personal customers, but quite a lot of email inquiries. Being familiar with how the business operated, Emily had no trouble responding to the emails. She even managed to find a few of the books requested and parcelled them up for delivery. Things were a bit more complicated with customers who came into the shop. Most either failed to realise she was a man or were too polite to indicate they had read her. One or two, however, were more forward. One lady complimented her on her outfit, and one, rather presumptuous, gentleman even went so far as to ask her whether she fancied going out for a drink with him when she had closed up for the day. Emily politely declined. The Thursday started off in a similar fashion, although, of course, Emily chose a different outfit, as any self-respecting woman would. This time, she picked out a white blouse and black skirt, again with simple accessories and a daytime makeup. Things became a little more complicated around lunchtime. When the phone rang, Emily assumed it was another customer inquiry and adopted her feminine voice. "Good afternoon, C&R Books. How may I help you?" "Is that you, Alex?" asked the voice on the other end of the phone. It was his boss, Colin, from the advertising agency. Alex had explained when asking for leave that he had to cover at the bookshop whilst his wife was abroad. However, Alex hadn't chosen to confide in Colin that he would be doing so as Emily. Colin was of course aware of Alex's alter ego having been party to the comic relief episode. Alex rapidly adjusted his voice. "Yes, Colin, it's me. Is there a problem?" "Quite a big one, actually," Colin responded, dryly. "Our printers have only just informed me that they have gone bust and are in administration. This means that all that material you sent off last week isn't going to be processed and, as you know, we have a contractual deadline with the customer." Alex thought fast. "It's okay. I think I can sort it." "Good," said Colin abruptly. "Now get your ass over here pronto and get on the case." I'm sure the bookshop will last without you for the rest of the day." Not having any option, Alex said he would get across to the agency at once. "No time to go home and change," he thought ruefully. "I'll just have to suck it up and explain why I am dressed as a woman. Colin and my team have seen Emily on social media, so they know I sometimes cross-dress for a good cause. I just hope I can convince them this is one such." Fortunately, the agency was reasonably close, and it only took Alex a few minutes to drive there. After parking the car, he took a deep breath, touched up his hair and makeup in the mirror, and entered his office with a certain amount of trepidation. The receptionist did a double take. "Can I help you?" she started, before recognizing him. "Oh my goodness, Alex, you've dragged up again," she giggled. "There is an explanation, and I'm sure you'll hear about it soon enough. However, Colin is expecting me now, as there is a major problem that needs sorting out." He hurried through to Colin's office. As he entered, Colin looked up and burst out laughing. "When I heard your voice on the phone, I sort of expected you were playing at being Emily again." "I'm not playing," Alex answered. "Crossleader is all to do with Pride Weekend and what Rachel and Cheryl have asked me to do. However, we don't have time to discuss that now. Tell me exactly what the printers have said." Colin looked sceptical, but swiftly brought Alex up to speed with the situation. "Well, the good news is that we only sent electronic copies of the artwork, so the originals plus our electronic files are still here," Alex explained. "I'll get the team on to putting together a new package, whilst I phone round other print firms and call in a few favours." George and Heidi, the other members of Alex's team, were also amused by the way he was dressed, but had the wit not to ask questions, but rather set to putting a new package of material together. Meanwhile, Alex started to phone his contacts in the print industry. Although everyone he spoke to was sympathetic, the extremely short notice meant that few had spare capacity, and even some of those who did lack the specialised equipment needed for this particular job. However, 2 hours later, an exhausted Alex was able to report he had found another firm who could do the job within the required time frame. "It will be tight, but I think we are sorted," he said. Colin was mightily relieved. "Well done, all of you," he told the team. "You've worked your socks off this afternoon, and I think that deserves a bit of a celebration. Let's go down the pub, and I'll buy the drinks." Heidi and George perked up immediately, but Alex looked worried, indicating with a gesture his attire. "I'm not really dressed for the pub," he told them, ruefully. "Nonsense," Colin reposted. "Alex may not be, but Emily looks lovely." "Oh, come on," urged Heidi. "I'll look after you. Just 2 girls together. I don't think anyone will give you a second glance other than one of lust from the chaps. Your blouse and skirt are typical office wear." Although Alex's was still doubtful, Emily allowed herself to be persuaded. Fortunately, it was still early, and the pub wasn't overly busy. George found them a secluded table, whilst Colin bought the drinks. He came back with 2 glasses of white wine and 2 pints of lager. "I thought about champagne," he joked, "but I thought that might draw attention. I also assumed Emily is a wine, not a beer, drinker." Emily grinned and raised her glass. "Cheers, here's to a great team," she toasted, starting to relax. Once you are in a situation without any choice of action, it is best to get rid of nervous apprehension and start preparing to cope with whatever comes next. "All right," Colin said when they had settled down. "Are you now going to explain why you are dressed as Emily? I know you said it is something to do with Pride Weekend, but that doesn't start until Saturday, and today is only Thursday." Alex had been giving thought as how to best answer this inevitable question. Rachel and Cheryl have gone to an important book fair in Frankfurt. Unfortunately, this coincided with Pride Weekend, where Cheryl has been preparing a large collection of relevant books for sale. They asked me cover for the weekend and, thinking I would be more comfortable presenting as trans rather than gay, suggested I dress as Emily. After all, as you all know, I have done this before in support of good causes. "That's all very well, but it still doesn't explain why you needed to dress today," Colin persisted. "I needed to get back into the right frame of mind," Alex answered. "After all, it is quite a while since I last wore a skirt and heels." It was a weak explanation, and he knew it, but, fortunately for Alex, the others left it there, even if they did exchange smiles and winks. Having got that out of the way, the 4 of them settled down and started discussing how they might cope with the loss of one of their regular printers. More drinks were purchased, but not by the ladies. Clearly, Alex was now considered to be a woman for the duration. Finally, Emily had to announce she really should drink no more. "I need to get back and prepare for setting up at the fair tomorrow. As it is, I'm had too much to drive. I'll have to leave the car here and pick it up in the morning." She and Heidi visited the ladies' loo, and then Emily rang for a taxi as the party broke up. By now, Emily was sufficiently merry not to worry about how the taxi driver might react. Fortunately, he said nothing. When she got home, the first thing Emily did was to brew a jug of strong black coffee. This had the desired effect of clearing her head. She put a pizza in the oven, had a quick supper, and headed for bed. She still had to clean off her makeup and go through the usual female rituals before bed. The plan for Friday was that Emily would open the bookshop in the morning whilst loading the books and display material into her car. She would shut the shop at lunchtime and spend the afternoon getting set up at the Pride Fair. Emily had decided that, as she would be carrying and moving books and equipment, trousers would be more appropriate than a skirt. As this was a garment she didn't have in her wardrobe, Emily Minus, as Alex's, had visited a few charity shops earlier in the week and put together an appropriate outfit. Although, with hindsight, maybe a coloured top would have been better than a white blouse. In the event, she wasn't able to get away before 3 p.m, so when she arrived at the fair, most stall holders were well underway with their preparations. Emily found her allocated place and set about putting up the display material Cheryl had prepared and laying out the books in a way to encourage browsing. She worked steadily, but by the time she had finished, there was only one other smallholder still working. Emily had noticed her earlier. The woman had arrived even later than Emily. Her stall was advertising the local lesbian chapter and the activities they offered. The woman came over and introduced herself. "Hi, I'm Sandra, and as you can see, I'm part of the local lesbian group. I couldn't help noticing you have quite a lot of lesbian literature on display. Are they all for sale, as I am a bit of a collector in that field?" "Oh, everything is for sale," Emily hastened to reassure Sandra. "I'm Emily, and as you can see, I represent the trans side of the spectrum. We have managed to find some quite rare and out-of-print volumes you might be interested in. And it's not just novels, I also have several early factual books about lesbianism. The proprietor, Cheryl, for whom I'm covering, told me they provide a fascinating insight into how same-sex relationships were viewed back then. Feel free to browse. If you find anything you like, I'd be happy to put a sold sticker on them. I'd like to keep them on the stand until the end of play tomorrow, so as to attract attention. Would that be all right?" Sandra happily agreed, and the two of them spent about half an hour going through Emily's stock. Sandra was delighted to find a couple of volumes she didn't have in her collection. "I've been keeping my eye out for these for a while," she told Emily. Emily, too, was very pleased to have made such a good start, selling 2 valuable items before the fair had even opened. Pleased with her purchases, Sandra suggested going for a drink. "Well, just a quick one," Emily replied. "Only I got a bit carried away last night, and I want to have a clear head for tomorrow." "Oh, me too," Sandra said quickly. "I have to get prepared for the parade through town in the morning. Just one quick glass, I promise, and then we can both get out beauty sleep." The two women walked to a nearby pub. "This is where we hold our chapter meetings," Sandra explained, "so the fact you are trans won't arouse any comment." Emily had already decided it was better to admit to being trans than to try and explain the complicated story she told everyone else. "So, are you in a relationship?" Sandra inquired when they had settled down with their drinks. "Yes, I'm married, and my wife Rachel is a partner in the bookshop with Cheryl, who I have already mentioned. I'm covering for them as they are at a book fair in Frankfurt for the weekend. What about you? Do you have a partner?" Sandra suddenly looked sad. "Not exactly," she explained. "I was with someone until recently, but she ran off with a little tart from the office." Tears welled up in eyes, but she tried to smile through. "It's classic, isn't it? An office romance. Although the conventional story is of a man going off with his secretary, not a woman seducing the receptionist." "I'm so sorry," Emily said, not sure how best to respond. "Oh, it's okay. I'm getting over it," Sandra said, wiping her eyes. "Have I smudged my mascara?" she inquired. Emily was able to reassure her all was well. "This only happened a couple of weeks ago, which is why I have thrown myself into work with the chapter. It takes my mind off things." Not wanting to get into disclosing any more personal details about her own circumstances, Emily decided it was time to change the conversation. "So what sort of things do you do in your chapter?" she asked. Fortunately, this question galvanized Sandra, and the conversation shifted into a much wider range of topics about interests and pastimes. They chatted away convivially for about an hour before Emily said, "Well, I don't know about you, I think I ought to call it a day. If we are to be fresh for tomorrow." Sandra agreed, and the two parted, having arranged to look out for each other at the Pride Parade in the morning. When Alex got home, he ran a hot bath and lay luxuriating, as the warmth eased the aches of the day out of his joints. Afterwards, he slipped into a pair of silky pajamas and a robe, and began assembling her outfit for the following day. Before departing for Frankfurt, Rachel had suggested, Why don't you wear the outfit we got for Some Like It Hot? See previous story, posted in 2021. It is very pretty and deserves another outing. Also, if you carry an appropriate placard, it will attract attention and advertise our stall at the fair. The 1920s flapper costume was quite elaborate, and Alex/Emily needed to check all the items needed were together. It was in the mindset of Emily that she climbed into bed and fell asleep. The following morning, Emily was woken early by her alarm. Hopping out of bed, she had a quick shower before donning her undies and sitting down to put on her makeup, which took quite a time. The outfit comprised a grey net dress with a deep fringed hem, decorated with blue beads and sequins. With it, Emily wore fishnet stockings above the knee, fingerless elbow-length gloves, pearl jewellery, and a headband. She carried a clutch purse and long cigarette holder, with a fake cigarette, of course. Once properly attired, Emily just had time for a quick cup of coffee before setting off to the park where the Pride Parade was assembling. She was surprised how many people had turned up for the parade. These can't all be locals, she thought. We must be attracting LGBTQ+ from all around the area. That's encouraging. Emily pushed through the crowd, trying to find Sandra, but before she was able to do so, she was accosted by a good-looking, young, blonde-haired man who, from his overly camp behaviour, was evidently gay. "Well, who have we here?" he inquired, grinning. "Aren't you just the cutest little thing? I think I gobble you up." Emily laughed. "I think you might find my old bones a bit tougher than you think," she joked. "I'm Emily." "And who might you be?" "Jerome," the youth replied. "And this is my partner Clive." The two men were dressed in striped blazers, white cricketing flannels, and open-necked shirts with cravats. "Emily, you are far too elegantly dressed to be expected to walk in the parade. I absolutely insist you join Clive and me in our sports car." He indicated a cream vintage MG parked off to the side. "You can sit up on the back and wave to the crowd. We will only be going at a crawl, so there is no risk of you falling off." On a whim, Emily decided to accept Jerome's offer. It might be fun. "Okay," she said, "you're on." "Great, climb up, we will be setting off in a few moments." And so Emily rode through the parade, elegantly perched on the back of the car, waving to the crowd and making sure they all saw her placard advertising C&R books at the fair. The MG wasn't the only vehicle in the parade. A few yards behind Jerome, Clive and Emily, there was a flatbed lorry on which rode a number of outrageously dressed drag queens. One wore a sash and tiara, declaring her the recent winner of a Miss Drag contest. The parade wound its way slowly through the town before eventually arriving at the old town hall, where the Pride Fair was being held. Inevitably, thither had to sit through a number of speeches. A couple were quite amusing, but most were pretty routine. Finally, the speeches were over, and the parade dispersed. Emily thanked Jerome and Clive profusely, kissing them warmly on the cheek, to both her and their surprise. "Maybe we'll see you later," Jerome said, as he and Clive drove away. The square in front of the old town hall had been set up as a party space with food and drink stalls and a bandstand. Currently, a pretty trans guitarist was playing a set. Emily hurried into the hall to take up her place at the bookstall. Sandra was already at her stall and she came across. "Wow, you look lovely," she complimented Emily. "I'm sorry I missed you in the park, but I saw you in the parade and you clearly had a better offer." Emily had the grace to blush. "Yes, it was fun," she replied. There was no opportunity for further conversation as the hall was rapidly filling, and the two women had to concentrate on their stalls. It was tiring but rewarding few hours for Emily. The ELT books Cheryl had accumulated attracted a lot of interest, and Emily managed to sell most of them. Even better, though, was the number of people who used the cheat code displayed to sign up to the bookshop's mailing list. "I think Cheryl and Rachel will be pleased with my efforts," Emily thought as the crowds finally thinned. "Mind you, they will owe me. These heels are killing my feet." I was about 2 p.m. before Emily was able to talk to Sandra, who had also been very busy. Sandra had had the foresight to bring a flask of coffee, which she shared with Emily. As the two sipped their drink, relieved to be able to kick their shoes off at last, Sandra asked a question. "Are you going to the reception this evening?" Emily hadn't been aware of this event, and said so. "Only, if you would like to come, I have a spare ticket. I bought a pair weeks ago, and now, of course, I don't have anyone to go with." Tears welled up in her eyes as Emily reached out a comforting hand. "I'd love to go and keep you company," she said. Sandra perked up immediately. "I know you aren't a lesbian, and I promise this isn't an attempted pickup," she giggled, "but it would be better to go with a friend than sit at home moping." Emily was thrilled she was able to help Sandra out. Sandra explained the reception was scheduled to be held in the very hall they currently occupied at 7:30, so we had better hurry up and clear our stalls away, she explained. Emily then noticed that other stalls were swiftly being dismantled. She and Sandra hurried to do the same. Fortunately, it proved quicker to take things down than it had been to put them up, and before long they were arranging to meet in the pub across the road at 7:15 p.m. Emily drove home and hopped into another warm bath. I could get used to this, she thought dreamily. Then, of course, there was the agonizing choice of what to wear. By now, Alex had worked through most of his Emily wardrobe. Fortunately, I still have the black dress I wore on the comic relief television show, he thought, as he took it off its hanger to be pressed. One area in which Emily was well supplied, however, was wigs. These being expensive, initially she had only possessed 2. Then, she had a stroke of luck. Crystal, the transsexual who ran Indulgence, the dressing service Alex had used in the days before Rachel became more supportive, rang one day to say, "I'm carrying out a major overhaul of the Indulgence wardrobe. Some of the wigs would be better replaced, but they still have life left in them. I wondered whether you might be interested in buying a couple. I can offer you a good price." Alex jumped at the offer and ended up buying 4. A long blonde one, which could be worn down as well as coffered into a stylish updo, 2 auburn, 1 curly and the other long and wavy, and a long dirty blonde with nice highlights. All of these were now coming into their own. For the Pride reception, Emily knew she would need to look stylish. So, taking out her long blonde wig, she spent quite some time dressing it on a wig stand into a very pretty style, with a French pleat at the back and soft tendrils framing her face. When, having dressed and applied her makeup, she carefully fixed it to her head, Emily was pleased with her appearance. I actually look quite cute, she thought. It was a balmy summer's evening, so Emily didn't bother with a wrap. Checking that her clutch purse contained everything she might need: lipstick, powder, mascara, phone, credit card, cash for emergencies, tissues, and a couple of condoms and a tampon, she phoned for a taxi and set off for the old town hall. Always grinned when he checked his purse for condoms and tampons. He intended never to need either, but Emily knew that women on a night out always went prepared. She could do no less. The Woodman pub where Emily had arranged to meet Sandra was already quite crowded, with people attending the reception. There was no sign of Sandra, but she noticed Jerome and Clive in the middle of a noisy crowd. Jerome spotted her immediately. "Oh, darling, you look gorgeous," he gushed. "You must have a drink and meet my friends." Emily allowed herself to be dragged over to the bar where a glass of fizz was shoved into her hand. Jerome made various introductions. "This is my new girlfriend Emily," he enthused. "Isn't she just the cutest little tranny?" In his own circle, Jerome was even more outrageously camp than he had been in the afternoon. Emily went with the flow, smiling and accepting the banter in good part, giving back as best she could. "I'm sure you are all familiar with Jerome's motor," she said with a straight face. "Well, I rode it today, and the engine power was really quite impressive." The sally produced gales of laughter, and Emily was immediately accepted as one of the gang. A few minutes later, Sandra pitched up and came across to join them. "Oh well, I suppose you will now be off with your lesbian girlfriend," Jerome wailed in mock horror. "Have we gays lost you for all time?" Emily, now quite emboldened, leaned over and kissed him firmly on the lips. "Not at all, sweetie. I shall expect to have at least 2 dances with you this evening." The group broke up with happy laughter, as it was now time to cross the square to the old town hall. Once inside, Sandra deftly extracted Emily for the group of men and guided her across to where some of her friends had already secured a table. "Hi girls, this is my new friend Emily," she said in introduction. "She's not exactly one of us, but for tonight I declare her an honorary lesbian." There were a few puzzled looks, but it didn't take long for Emily's true sex to be outed. "You scrub up really well, dear," said one older woman, patting her on the knee. "If I wasn't already fixed," indicating a younger woman seated across the table, "I might be tempted myself." As the woman was dressed in a tuxedo and her partner in a pretty dress, Emily rightly guessed her to be the dyke in the relationship. Emily's new friends, in the time between closing the fair and the evening reception, the hall had been transformed. Now it was gaily decorated in Pride rainbow colours. The reception started with a few brief speeches from the organisers of Pride weekend, thanking all the various businesses and individuals from the town who had contributed towards making it a big success. Fortunately, these didn't go on too long, and soon a band was up on stage playing a medley of iconic gay songs. Sandra's group, along with Emily, were among the first on the dance floor. Emily was really enjoying herself. For once she was able to have fun in public, without having to worry about being outed. The evening passed quickly in a whirl of dancing, drinking and chatting. Jerome claimed his 2 promised dances. He proved to be a very good dancer, and Emily soon found herself in the centre of an admiring circle of people, clapping and urging them on. Jerome needed no such encouragement as he twirled and flipped Emily through moves she had no idea she could do. By the end of the second dance, she was exhausted. Jerome, that was amazing. She complimented him as they embraced in a close hug. The pleasure was all mine, Jerome replied, curtsying. I've never been into trannies before, but if you are ever at a loose end. Sorry, Emily grinned. I don't think my wife would approve. Shame, but worth a try, Jerome answered ruefully. They shared a final kiss and returned to their respective groups. All too soon the last dance was announced. Emily danced this with Sandra. It was a slow and lingering tune, and it didn't take long for Sandra's hands to find Emily's bottom and gently caress it. Not wanting to appear to be rejecting Sandra, who had already had a crying session in the ladies' loo over her ex-partner, Emily snuggled closer and let her hands roam a swell. At the conclusion of the dance, the 2 women shared a long and passionate kiss. Finally, Emily broke away. Thank you for inviting me tonight, Sandra. I have had a lovely time and made so many new friends. I really hope we can keep in touch. But, you know I'm basically a straight man. Sandra nodded sadly. I know, but thank you for being here for me tonight. I don't think I could have get through it without you. Sharing phone numbers, the 2 promised to keep in touch. Fortunately, Emily had had the foresight to book a taxi, as there was a real scum in the square as she left. A few minutes later, she was home and easing her heels of sore feet. Well, that was quite an evening, she mused, and she undressed and removed her makeup. In fact, the whole week had been a blast. I guess my reputation is on even rockier ground than before, but maybe it wouldn't as disastrous as I think to be outed. At least I won't have to look for excuses to dress. The following morning, Alex,
for he was now back in Mail,
sadly packed all Emily's things away and cleaned up the house in preparation for Rachel's return from Frankfurt. After lunch, he drove to the airport and met Rachel and Cheryl off their plane. Cheryl gave a moan of disappointment that Alex, not Emily, was meeting them. Once Alex had dropped Cheryl off at her house, Rachel could contain herself no longer. Well, how did it go? You never sent me any picture, you brute. Tell me everything. Alex sketched in the broad outline. There are so many details to tell you that will have to wait until we get home. Over supper, Rachel sat open-mouthed as Alex went through all the adventures Emily had enjoyed. I can't believe you went into the office en femme and resolved a major crisis, she exclaimed. When it came to describing the Pride reception and dance, Rachel was in fits of laughter. Oh, I would have given anything to say you dancing with Jerome. You never dance like that with me. I see we are going to have to experiment a bit more. Their conversation had made both partners very randy, and as soon as supper was over, Rachel dragged Alex up to the bedroom. It was quite late before they fell asleep. As he dozed off, Alex allowed himself to drift back into Emily mode. After this week, I am definitely going to have to spend more time dressed, she thought. All my pretty clothes should be worn, not left in the wardrobe. I must come up with a plan, and with that she finally drifted off to sleep.